Today, the story of the robbery that I am going to tell you is so shocking because the person who robbed the banks wasn't a thief. He was actually a police officer. The most surprising thing is that this police officer didn't just rob one bank. He robbed several banks over the span of 3 years. These banks were looted in a city 500 kms away from South Africa so cleanly that no one had the slightest clue during the robberies. He never took anyone hostage or hurt anyone. He would simply point a gun, take the money, and disappear. Later on, this police officer even formed a gang, and they would rob multiple banks in a single day. But by the time the police came to know about it, it was too late. These robberies took away the police's sleep at night, and they were constantly troubled by the question of how these robberies were happening so quickly. And when the mastermind behind these robberies finally came before them, they were completely shocked. So who was this thief? How did he transform from a police officer into a criminal? And what did the police finally do with him? This will blow your mind. The story starts in 1983, when 3 men enter a trust bank in Johannesburg, South Africa, in broad daylight. After entering the bank, the 3 men quietly hand their bags to the cashier and tell her to silently fill them with all the cash. In just a few minutes, these robbers leave the bank without firing a single shot or leaving any evidence. But this was just the beginning. By the end of the day, 3 more banks were looted in exactly the same way. These continuous robberies made the police think hard about how they were happening and who was behind them. The mastermind behind all of these robberies was named Andrew Stander, who was born in 1946 in the South African city of Transvaal. Since Andrew's father was also a police officer, there was always pressure on him from childhood to become one too. His father always wanted Andrew to become a police officer at a young age. As soon as he graduated, he joined a police training college in Pretoria. By the age of 17, Andrew completed his training with excellent marks. Since his father was in a high rank in the police, Andrew became a captain by the time he was 26. Shortly after becoming a captain, he joined the Compton Park Criminal Investigation Department, where he started working as a detective. Even though Andrew achieved success at a young age, he was not happy with what he was doing. He always felt he couldn't do what he truly wanted. This was the time when protests were happening all over South Africa against the apartheid and the atrocities being committed against Black Africans. White Africans were discriminating and mistreating Black Africans, and due to this, protests were spreading all over. The government was also becoming unstable. Andrew's life was still normal up to this point, but the changing political atmosphere and a 1976 incident changed his life forever. He saw one of his fellow officers kill 176 school children to stop a protest. This left a deep and dark impact on Andrew's mind. Around this time, Andrew also began having frequent fights with his wife. By 1980, he divorced her. But just a few days after the divorce, he found out that his wife was pregnant and he was going to become a father. So he married her again to take care of the child. However, even after remarrying, things didn't improve and he divorced her again. He couldn't understand where his life was going. Meanwhile, people were dying in protests in South Africa, and the changing political environment was troubling Andrew. This was the time when he decided he would change his life and start robbing banks. Since Andrew was a police officer and detective, he knew everything about how banks worked. That's why it didn't take him long to plan the robberies. In 1981, one morning while sitting in his office in Johannesburg, he decided that he would commit his first bank robbery that very day. During his lunch break, he left the office and went straight to the airport. He bought a ticket and caught a flight to Durban, which is 500 km from Johannesburg. This was a time when airport security was not as tight as today, and passengers were not checked thoroughly. Taking advantage of this, Andrew successfully carried a revolver with him. After landing in Durban, he booked a car and went straight to the bank. After parking the car, he wore a wig and fake mustache to change his appearance. He entered the bank and approached the cashier's counter, where a woman started looking at him suspiciously. Before she could understand anything, Andrew pulled out the revolver and showed it to her, giving her an empty bag and asking her to fill it with cash. When the cashier filled the bag with money, Andrew silently left the bank, put the bag in the car's trunk, and drove to the Durban airport. From there, he caught a return flight to Johannesburg. Everything happened so fast that the bank staff didn't understand anything. By the time they informed the police, it was already too late. This was the most flawless robbery ever executed in South Africa. The most shocking part was that after the robbery, Andrew returned to his office and resumed work before anyone noticed he was gone. This first robbery in Durban was just a glimpse of how much money Andrew would make from robbing banks. Between 1981 and 1984, he robbed around 30 banks, which made him the most wanted criminal in South Africa. By 1985, he had made enough money to easily retire, but he decided to continue his job and the robberies. One of the reasons he hadn't been caught yet was that people at the time believed only Black Africans committed crimes and that no white African could be involved in such acts. Also, since Andrew's father held a high position in the police, no one ever suspected him. With the money he made from the robberies, Andrew bought a luxurious house and a car. But still, he didn't stop. He partnered with his best friend, Carvin Dentor, and together they opened an antique shop. Carvin was completely unaware that his partner was a seasoned criminal, and the antique shop was only opened so Andrew could launder the money from his robbery. One night, while Andrew and Carwan were drinking together, Andrew said something that completely changed his life forever in front of D. Carwan, presenting another new business idea. He says, "Why don't they both team up and start doing bank robberies?" Hearing this, Carwan is left stunned. Andrew tells Carwan that a car will be waiting for them outside the airport the next morning, and in a very short time, they could rob a bank and earn a lot of money. Andrew thought his friend Carwan would agree easily, but when he refuses, Andrew laughs loudly and says he was just joking. However, doubt had already started creeping into Carwan's mind. Andrew had no idea that the Carwan he was talking to about robbing a bank was actually an undercover agent working for South Africa's state security. After this conversation, Carwan informs his bureau that the person he's running the antique shop with might be the very thief the police have been looking for the past 3 years. As a result, the police start keeping an eye on Andrew and begin collecting evidence against him. During this time, the police find a car parked in a deserted area near Unsolved airport. When they search the car, they find a mask, a revolver, fake number plates, and a photo of Andrew. Though the police now had enough evidence to begin questioning Andrew, they wanted to catch him red-handed, so they decide to wait until Andrew himself comes to sit in that car. For many weeks, the police kept watch on the car, and finally, one night in 1985, they get their first success. In the darkness of the night, they see Andrew approaching his car to take out the mask and gun. He takes all the stuff and boards a flight to Durban, where he planned to commit his next bank robbery. Neither did the police arrest him at that time, nor did they follow him to Durban, because they had already decided to wait outside the airport to catch him red-handed with the cash. Eventually, when Andrew returned to Jan Smuts Airport after the robbery, he had a bag filled with 40,000 rand. As soon as he reached his car, police officers approached him and asked about the money in the bag. Seeing this, Andrew panicked and had no answer. After that, the police arrested him immediately. During the interrogation, Andrew told the police that over the last 3 years, he had stolen approximately 5.5 million rand from banks, which was around 8.5 million in that era. However, the amount was always small, and Andrew would rob smaller amounts from each bank to minimize his risk of getting caught. Andrew knew very well that if he targeted bank vaults or took people hostage, he would attract more attention from the police and get caught easily. The most surprising thing was that most of these robberies were committed during his lunch breaks. That's why he had to quickly execute the robbery and return before anyone noticed. Because Andrew had been working in the police department for the past 10 years, he knew how long it took for police to arrive at a bank and how they conducted investigations. This is why he was always able to escape before the police arrived. In the ADS, the average annual income of a white South African was around 35,000 rand. But due to these bank robberies, Andrew was making a good amount of money and had managed to evade the police for 3 years. However, his bank robbery journey came to an end when the police arrested him and sent him to trial. In court, Andrew gave a statement explaining how he turned from a police officer into a thief, a transformation that changed his life forever. He said he became a bank robber because he was deeply disturbed by the atrocities and discrimination against Black people. Watching how police violently suppressed protests made his blood boil, and he started hating his job. He also told the court that in 1976, he and another officer had to shoot nearly 176 Black students just because they were protesting against apartheid. Since that day, he had lost his peace and couldn't sleep properly. This protest took place on June 16, 1976, in the South African city of Tembisa, where Black people were protesting in different places. To stop the protest, when the government ordered police to open fire, Andrew was among them. However, when the court investigated and verified whether Andrew was actually forced to shoot those students, a new revelation came to light. Andrew wasn't even part of the police team that fired on the protesters. While Andrew was claiming something else, it became clear to the court and the police that Andrew was using this excuse to justify his crimes. In reality, during the South African border war, Andrew was posted in Angola, after which he was sent to a desk job in Johannesburg. Many believed that perhaps Andrew wasn't getting the adventure and thrill he wanted from his job, which is why he decided to start robbing banks. After a month-long trial on May 6, 1985, the court sentenced Andrew to 75 years in prison. Since this sentence was for different crimes and charges, he could serve it concurrently, meaning he had to spend 17 years in jail. All of Andrew's police badges were taken away, and he was sent to Zonderwater prison, located in Cullinan, South Africa. While most prisoners' crime journeys end once they enter jail, for Andrew, this was just the beginning. The thefts were about to become even more dangerous and challenging. Upon reaching prison, Andrew began making friends because he had something big and dangerous in mind. Since he had executed some of South Africa's most successful bank robberies, he was highly respected in jail. This is why he befriended another bank robber named Alan Hale. From here, the story takes a shocking turn. Although Alan wasn't as big of a bank robber as Andrew, having robbed just 5 banks, the two started sharing their methods and techniques. They began spending more and more time together. And during this time, Alan discovered that Andrew hated the South African system so much that he didn't even like speaking their mother tongue, Afrikaans. Andrew believed that banks were greedy and ruthless, exploiting common people, and he saw no wrong in robbing them. Eventually, their friendship grew so deep that they started planning a prison escape. It was decided that one of them would escape first and then return to get the other out. Andrew had now served 3 years in jail, and he finally got the opportunity to execute his escape plan. He had frequent back pain, so he was sent for physiotherapy with guards. This was the chance he had been waiting for. One morning, Andrew and another inmate named Patrick were being escorted by 2 guards to a physiotherapy session. During the walk, Andrew signals something to Patrick. On receiving the signal, both of them knock the guards down, snatch their guns, get into the guard's car, and flee. A few hours later, they stop at a farmhouse and, at gunpoint, ask the owner to call the police to the farmhouse. This was shocking because they had just escaped prison and calling the police would get them caught. But Andrew knew exactly what he was doing. Andrew was well aware that the entire area was under police blockade, and to get out, they would need a police vehicle with a siren. When the police officers arrived at the farmhouse, Andrew and Patrick took them hostage, stripped them of their uniforms, tied them and the owner up, locked them in the trunk of the same car they had escaped in, and then drove off in the police car. Although they had successfully escaped, they didn't want to spend the rest of their lives hiding. So they first robbed 13,000 rand from a showroom and started planning to break Alan Hale out of jail. 2 months had passed since Andrew and Patrick escaped. Then came October 31, 1988, the day 2 guards were escorting Alan for a trade certification exam. Once again, Andrew and Patrick stopped the van mid-lot, tied the guards up, took their weapons, and escaped with Alan. The three of them drove the van to a place they had turned into a safe house and where they were going to carry out their future criminal activities. Once Alan's escape news spread, the media started calling the trio the Stander Gang. Now, Andrew wasn't alone. He had two trustworthy partners, and together they resumed their bank robbery spree using the same method. No shootings, no hostages, just quiet, clean getaways. These increasing robberies began to trouble the police. Upon investigation, they discovered that the person behind them was none other than Andrew Stander, who had escaped from jail. Meanwhile, a reporter named Chris Swell from the Gazette newspaper received an audio tape via courier. It contained the voice of Alan Hale, explaining that their gang had one rule. They would neither fire guns in banks nor take hostages. They neither hurt nor killed anyone. They did this so they could rob the bank quickly without scaring people. There was another reason behind doing this. They had to loot 2 or 3 banks in a single day. If they scared or threatened people, it wouldn't have been possible. Andrew's gang was now fearlessly carrying out these bank robberies. And things went too far when they robbed a bank under which police were already waiting for them. But such bravery sometimes brings trouble. And the same happened with Andrew. Once, while committing a robbery, police were nearby. To escape them, he jogged away from the scene. Another time, he had to run away from a restaurant because the restaurant owner recognized him. Together, Andrew and his 2 partners had stolen 1 million rand, which in today's time is worth several $1,000,000. This was much more than what Andrew had stolen alone earlier. Anyway, with the money from these bank robberies, they started buying expensive things and decided to continue the robberies. But one mistake cost them dearly, and that was indulging with different women. On the morning of 25th January 1990, all 3 entered a bank, unaware that hidden CCTV cameras were installed inside. And they got captured on those CCTV cameras. Police immediately published their photos in newspapers the next day and announced a reward for anyone who gave information about them. As soon as these photos were seen, many different women started coming to the police station and informed the police that they knew about Andrew, his partners, and their hideout. During the time when Andrew and his partners' photos were published in newspapers, Andrew was in Florida. His 2 partners started feeling they should separate because if they stayed together or were seen together, they'd get caught. Alan left the other 2 while Patrick decided to stay hidden in one of their safe houses in South Africa, thinking he'd be safe there. Patrick's decision sealed their fate. Just 3 days after hiding in the safe house, police surrounded it from all sides. They asked Patrick to surrender, but instead of surrendering, he started shooting at the police. In return, the police also fired at him. After a brief exchange of fire, when Patrick suddenly stopped firing, the police entered the safe house and found Patrick lying dead on the ground. Since Alan had hidden in Greece, as soon as he heard about Patrick's death, he fled from there and kept moving across Europe for the next year so that police wouldn't reach him. By now, it was 1991. Alan got caught by police while trying to rob a bank in the UK. After arrest, he was charged with robbery and using weapons. The British court sentenced him to 9 years. After completing 9 years, he was deported to South Africa so he could serve time for the crimes he committed there. Upon reaching South Africa, he was charged with robbery, looting, and prison escape. He spent 10 more years in prison. Eventually, in 2015, he was released on parole. During the time when Patrick was shot by police and Alan was hiding and fleeing, Andrew was still in Florida, where he was negotiating a boat deal to escape. The 3 of them believed they had earned enough money to live a comfortable life, so they decided to buy a boat and escape South Africa forever. This was the time Andrew learned about Patrick's death and that Alan had fled to Europe to escape the police. South African police had issued an international arrest warrant against Andrew, so they seized the boat they were planning to use to escape. To evade the police, Andrew decided to create a fake identity. He changed his name from Andrew to Peter Harris and started claiming to be Australian. He even got a fake passport under this name so that no one would suspect him. When he was arrested for driving an unregistered car, even the police were fooled, thinking he was an Australian named Peter Harris. After a brief interrogation, police let him go, unaware that he was not Australian, but a wanted criminal who had escaped from prison. Taking advantage of this fake identity, Andrew now began stealing in America, too, but this time not banks. He was stealing cars. Around this time, newspapers published stories about Andrew's prison escape and being a bank robber. One of the people Andrew sold a stolen car to recognized him and informed the police. As soon as they got the tip, police raided Andrew's house, but he wasn't there. Just moments earlier, he had left the house on his bike. Still, the police waited for him to return. As soon as Andrew came back, Officer Michael stood in front of him with a gun. Andrew now knew that he was caught and that his days of freedom outside jail were over. So, when was I ever in front of them, Coffin? But still, he made one last attempt to escape. He tried to grab the shotgun from the officer, but a bullet from the shotgun tore through his stomach. The police immediately called an ambulance, but by the time it arrived, South Africa's most wanted criminal was dead. This was the story of a police officer who, fed up with his own system, became a bank robber, dodged the police for many years, but eventually was killed. How did you find this story? Do let us know in the comment section. Like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.